Hi everyone, Brendan Brannigan here to talk about this new single from Brockhampton, 1999 Wildfire. So this is the first we've heard from the group since their appearance on Jimmy Fallon about a week or two ago now, where they performed Tanya live for the first time. And that was actually their first appearance since they kicked out former member Amir Van following multiple really awful allegations of emotional abuse and sexual misconduct and the like. And I'm not going to go too deeply into those allegations. I'm just going to say, if you want to look it up online, there's plenty of information you can find about it. And I'd just like to say that, as you can imagine, this will have had a huge impact on the group, considering how long generally all of the members have known each other for. So when you consider how much they will have all have known each other for and the trust there will have been between them, you can't really begin to imagine how big of an impact it will have had on the rest of the members. And you can definitely see a reflection of that in these past few tracks that they've released. Tanya was unusually angsty and emotional track from Brockhampton, but very much what you would expect them to come back with following those allegations. I did think in parts, just to touch on it, it was a bit angsty for me, but I like the track overall. We obviously haven't had a studio version of it as of yet, but I'd look forward to hearing that if they were to release it. So as far as 1999 Wildfire, this new track they've just released, I'm very excited about this song and the direction which maybe Brockhampton might go in from here. I definitely think has a very new sound from Brockhampton that we haven't really heard before. That's not to say that it's completely different. You can definitely hear the kind of signature Brockhampton sound on this track. You know, you can't really put your finger on it, but when you hear Brockhampton song, you know it's a Brockhampton song, and that's definitely the case with this. But at the same time, you can definitely see some very large developments in their sound. Almost like an evolution of sorts from previous works like Saturation 3 and just everything they've done in the past, really. I'd just like to say I find it really impressive how in such a short time, only really in the space of a year, I think, considering Saturation 1 was released last June, how much their sound has developed, and it's pretty crazy to think just how much the group has evolved since Saturation 1. So I'm also going to talk about the music video here because I think obviously the music video, it ties in very much also to the song as you would expect, really. So throughout the video, each member is filmed separately for each of their contributions to the track, which is quite unusual to see from Brockhampton, considering in every other music video we've seen them in, they're always interacting with each other. They almost like semi-like messing around. This video seems like much more of an intimate experience, as each member is directly addressing the camera, seems almost quite down or like subdued, more so than normal anyway. And I think this definitely ties into the theme of the track. And in the only section of the track where they are filmed together, we see each member in the same shot, but looking very isolated, very on their own, not interacting with each other at all. And the way I perceive this, anyway, is that as a result of the fallout from the situation with Amir, each member almost has these external walls up, and they're far less trustful than before and far more cynical. And I think this is actually in line with the overall themes of the track here, with the effects of fame leaving the band members more distrustful and feeling more isolated than ever, really. I also think that this is reflected in the delivery of each member on this track. Joba sounds almost offensive while talking about his come up and the people wishing to strike him down. Dom seems almost spiteful towards critics and seems to actually lash out somewhat. Matt's verse feels almost confessional in a way. Kevin's tone sounds reflective and cynical, as if he's almost heard it all before. And Bareface is Bareface. So if you'll allow me, I'm just going to talk about the hook for a bit here, because I think with this song in particular, I think that understanding the hook is vital to understanding the song on the whole. Um, I think the theme of the song ties in so heavily with the hook, and I think with the hook there's so much to unpack that it's really important to understand the meaning of the hook, or at least what I perceive to be the meaning in my case. So I'm just going to look at the lyrics, break them down section by section, and use that as a means of gaining an understanding of the hook on the whole. Starting off here, places that I can't go. So despite Kevin's newfound fame and him now having the financial means to realistically travel anywhere in the world he might want to as a result of it, he's unable to return to certain places. This is likely due to his fame having alienated people from those places, and them not really feel like he's welcome there. And it's quite likely also that Kevin himself doesn't feel likely there. Um, Likely due to his fame having given him new life experiences and life lessons, which he might not have experienced otherwise. And as a result of this, Kevin's a different person to who he once was. And because of this, he now feels more disconnected from his childhood and adolescence than ever, which is why he feels like he can't go to these places from his past life. And I feel quite confident in that this is the meaning of this, because I feel like Kevin has spoken quite a lot in previous tracks about how he's not really the same person he once was, and about how different he is now as a person than he once was just a few years prior. So moving on from this, I know they come and go, fellas that I don't know. So Kevin's fast-paced lifestyle, or at least the fast-paced nature of everything that is happening around him, is simultaneously burning bridges with people who he used to know, whilst stopping him from being able to form new and meaningful relationships with people who now surround him, other than, of course, the people who he's already closest to. So there could be multiple reasons for this. One reason could be that the people surrounding Kevin are now part of the music industry in general, and they're not really the kind of people who you would form relationships with, either because they're not really looking for that, they might be somewhat shady, they might just not have his best intentions at heart. Whatever it may be, they're not necessarily the kind of people who he might want to form a relationship with. And even if they are, it might well be unviable to do so, because they're constantly coming and going from his life. You don't really get the sense that there's any real permanence to Kevin's situation right now. It could also be because Kevin feels that fame has made him jaded, and he's not really in the right frame of mind to form any new relationships with people at this time anyway. I think that the idea of being surrounded by people who you don't actually recognize would be very alien to most of us, and would be very evocative of quite paranoid feelings. Kevin may well have trust issues at this point, and he's likely questioning the authenticity of people surrounding him, and I think that's what's shown in these lyrics here. And this leaves Kevin feeling isolated and alienated. So moving on, line, my wrist is stuck on froze. This shows both the financial security which Kevin now has, as well as the feeling that due to Kevin being able to do things at his own pace due to his fame, time waits for Kevin. For Kevin, time is not a factor in his everyday life, but this is actually an issue, because while it may not be a factor for Kevin, it is for everyone else. And this leads to the feeling that, you know, people are constantly coming and going and entering and exiting Kevin's life, and that he doesn't actually know any of these people. So the line, my mouth is getting cold, also points towards financial security, obviously with grills, and shows that Kevin is able to purchase like luxury items as a result of his fame and, again, newfound financial security. I get the feeling that there might be a bit more to this line than on face value. I think that you get the sense that the way the line is delivered, despite this ability to buy luxury items and the rest of it, he doesn't actually feel any more happy than previously, and it doesn't give him any sense of fulfillment. Again, I could be reaching with this line. There's not too much to give evidence for this, But just going off instinct, I feel the way he delivers this line shows that it's not just to be taken at face value. I also think that when we combine the idea of places that Kevin can't go and the current state which he finds himself in, Kevin is yearning for a time when he could form more connections with people and felt more in tune with himself, but he realizes he's unable to do so. I think I've seen Kevin on social media say that he misses, say, the days like Saturation 1, and I think that definitely makes sense here. Kevin seems to adopt this fuck it attitude and stops attempting to control his relationships with others, as he just doesn't feel it's worth his time and effort. My hands up, I let go. But this just makes him feel more antisocial and closed off, only worsening the problem. We actually see on the hook as well, Kevin ends several lines with this refrain, la 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 la. This playful, almost childish refrain during the hook contrasts the themes of the hook, which show that as a result of his fame, Kevin feels isolated from not only the people from his past life, but also feels that he's unable to form new connections with the people surrounding him. It feels as though Kevin is using this as a means of showing that he has to put on this front of being happy and untroubled in public appearances, when that's actually not the case. I would actually go as far to say that through this video, Kevin is showing that as time progresses, this act is becoming more and more taxing on his mental well-being. As Kevin sings the hook, while he initially starts off with his big plastered on, quite fake-looking smile, this smile begins to fade as the video moves on, until he's eventually just singing the hook completely expressionless with his face, and actually shaking his head as he does so, as if to show that he's either unable, unwilling, or both to continue this act any longer. So that concludes my feelings with the hook. I think that understanding the hook is pretty vital to understanding the track and vice versa. I think that it could definitely be applicable to the other band members. It likely is. You get the feeling with the hook that Kevin wishes he could return to this previous time, maybe around the time of Saturation 1 would be my guess, when they were actually on the come up, rather than at the point in their career which they are now. So I'd like to just talk about the song on the whole musically. I think that if you look at the production style, it definitely has the subtleties of a Brockhampton track which you would expect, but it's generally not quite as lush production as, say, on albums like, well, the Saturation trilogy as a whole. I also think that each member gives quite a good contribution to the track. I think that each member contributes really well to the track here. I really like Matt Champion's staccato flow on here, very fast-paced, very rapid, and also very catchy. Don McLennan comes in with a really just cold verse talking about critics and people being spiteful towards him and the group. Also, Joba, Jesus Christ, I love to hear more of Joba rapping. That's not to say that like he has done so in the past, but I think just his voice and his delivery, even if maybe lyrically he's not the strongest, it certainly makes up for that. And I'd also just like to say the shot in the music video where Joba starts is incredible. I don't know, it's a ridiculous shot. If I had one complaint with the track, I would say that while Bareface's contribution, it does transition the track excellently into the last leg, I suppose. It doesn't really do all too much for me. I like Bareface's singing usually, but it just feels a bit forced in here. And while I don't dislike Bareface's singing on this track, personally, it doesn't really do all that much for me. So just to conclude with this song, I think it's definitely one of the best songs Brockhampton have released overall, over the course of their very short but very packed career so far. I think It's got an incredibly catchy hook. Lyrically, the whole thing, it's very, very interesting to look at. And it's very reflective of recent events. And I like to hear that. I like to hear that Brockhampton are reacting to what's happening around them. I think that's very important. If they'd come back with just another banger, while, I mean, I wouldn't mind it, I don't think it would have been nearly as impactful. And yeah, I think this is one of the best tracks they've released so far in their career. Even if it's not perfect, I think it's just so emotionally textured, I suppose. It's so emotionally packed to the brim. I can't complain with it at all. I love this song. I think it's really excellent, and I'm really looking forward to see where Brockhampton goes with this sound in the future. Yeah, that's about all I have to say about this song, really. That's it.